Hello, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to a Diversity, Equity and Inclusion plenary lecture at InterPore. Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Committee was formed to promote the wonderful diversity we have in the InterPore community and find ways to enhance this. So welcome to the first ever plenary that will be given by Dr. Adriana Paluszny from Imperial College. Adriana did her undergraduate at Simón Bolívar University in Venezuela, summa cum laude in computational engineering. She then worked as an industrial research engineer in Austria and followed on from that to do a PhD at Imperial, where she stayed ever since. She currently is an associate professor and holds one of the most prestigious early career awards in the United Kingdom, that is Royal Society University Research Fellowship, and leads as a PI, a large Natural Environmental Research Council grant called SciScreen that is funded to the tune of £3.6 million. So welcome, Adriana.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to you about my pet project, the Watson Forum. So before I start telling you about what my project is about, which is basically a YouTube channel where I don't feature, I'll tell you a little bit about what I do, just so as a background. So I work in numerical modeling of porous media in the context of subsurface groundwater flow and permeability changes. My focus is on fracture propagation and fracture growth, and basically modeling how these environments can be simulated with numerical methods. And many years ago, as I guess part of destiny, I went to a hackathon organized by Microsoft. It was the first women's hackathon in London, and organized by them. And I was very lucky to have led the group that actually won the hackathon. And that meant that I got then invited to attend this event that they organized called DigiGirls, which is a great event where they talk to girls they invite girls from different schools, and they teach them computing skills, and they do like mini exercises and hackathons and so on. And as a part of that, they have a number of lectures as well. And I was, I played a very small role there as one of the hackathon winners. And that day, where I spent the whole day in Microsoft talking to them and what their vision was, I realized two things. One thing was that I wasn't doing enough. I was very focused on my own career and not really doing enough for others, or other women or girls for that matter. And the other thing that I also noticed was that the way that they were portraying computational careers wasn't quite the same way that I saw it. So the way that modeling was being portrayed was very artistic, very sort of soft science side of things. And I thought, oh, well, we could do better than that. We could show these girls that there's a reality out there for women in computational modeling, or modeling in general, that doesn't have to be soft or easy. You can actually make great strides if you just put your head to it, right? So that's where it all started. And then I decided that I needed to create some sort of a forum, some sort of a landing place where, if a girl was on the fence about studying a STEM subject where there's already interest, they could go there and, see a bunch of role models, meet, people that have these types of careers. And the first thing I did was to look for a local role model. So I chose Janet Watson, partially because she was quite distinguished. She was the first female graduate of our department at Imperial College, and she became the Imperial's third woman professor. So that was a great role model. And also, in addition to that, my PhD scholarship had been a Janet Watson scholarship. So then I thought, okay, this is a great sort of combination. And so I started building this concept around the Watson Forum and what modeling meant. So I thought, I went back to sort of the drawing board and I thought, okay, what is modeling to me? What is it? What do I think modeling is for our civilization? And I put together this, this very broad definition that of course is very geo-biased, because I am geo-biased. And I basically defined it as any activity that pertains to building any type of model, mathematical, geometric, computational, numerical, geological, to understand natural or man-made processes that may include quantification, interpretation, prediction, simulation, visualization, imitation, inspection, simplification, and any other activity related to understanding the world around us. And why I did that was because I wanted to include as many people as possible in this exercise. So I had already been approaching women about these interviews that I was putting together. They were, and the first answer was always, oh, I don't do modeling. I do experimental work, or I do this other thing. But they never quite, not always. Of course, I did find some, but not it. There were far fewer than I thought. So I changed my approach. I went back to the drawing board. I put this definition together, and then I decided to set up the YouTube channel. So I'm not, a very outgoing person myself. So I decided to do this without me featuring at all, which was a very good decision. And I basically made it all about all these women that I would portray here. I defined the Watson Forum as a platform where you could basically find real role models in STEM or in modeling, something that would be permanent and accessible and international and free and required no capex and opex, because I had no funding at the moment to do that. So I needed something that I could do sort of on my free time where I didn't need to pay anybody, and something that would be cumulative and would form a record that one could go back to and address. And so bit by bit, I started interviewing all these women, and I asked them all the three same questions. So their micro interviews are like 3 to 4 minutes, or between 2 and 4 minutes. And I asked them all the same questions, or a variation of the same question. The first one was about describing their work. So what is your work about, and what process do you model? I would sometimes throw in there, how did you get there, and so on. Then I'd ask them, what are the advantages of your career? Because that's something that I always wanted to know when I was choosing my career. Like, why should I study this? Why should I spend my time on this? What are the advantages? I'll just say here that for the longest time, I was personally going to study medicine. I even got into medical school, and then I decided that this was not the most advantageous path for me. And I decided to fall back to engineering, which would hopefully let me see the world. So I think that putting in there what the advantages of these career paths are was very important. And then at the end, I thought we needed something to humanize the videos, to connect with the audience. So I asked them all if they could send themselves a message to the past, what would they tell themselves? And it's very funny because everybody interprets this question in a very different way. So I have some very personal answers to that, some very professional ones, some in the middle, and so on. So it was also a very interesting activity for me to conduct. And so the project started, and bit by bit, I started interviewing all these women. Most of them I interviewed in my office, so that bookshelf in the back is one of the sides of my office, which I used to share with 2 other victims, which now don't have to endure my, endless requests for them to exit the office while I did the interview. But many of these interviews I also conducted at conferences or at ad hoc places when I visited different departments and so on. And I tried to really capture a mixture of career stages. So I wanted to have some senior professors there, some really early career researchers, some undergraduate students, and then it became more flexible. So I then started sourcing women from other departments at the university, but still with quite a strong bias towards geoscience. And I started building this cohort of women. So at the beginning, it was all about having these short but scientific presentations where women had an opportunity of showcasing their work, but also showing that their career was accessible to others and that perhaps was a little bit fun and interesting as well. But then I realized that this was also building a cohort. It was a group of women that had now something in common, having participated in there. And I also realized that these videos were having an effect on themselves. So they felt a little bit elevated, a little bit more visible, a little bit more appreciated. And I started hearing comments about how their family and friends had watched their videos and how this had had a positive feedback experience for them. So I realized that there was this secondary effect there that I didn't quite predict, which was enriching the forum. And so we have a modest amount of views, so 13,000 views. We've never paid for any advertising or whatsoever. So these are sort of pure views, and we have a 95% rate of new visitors. So we have some very tiny advertisement here and there in freestyle in the different fora that I attend. And we have 44 interviews, and they're all 3 to 4 minutes each. I have to say that there was a COVID hiatus, and during COVID, I decided as well to change my strategy. And this means to get funding to try to scale this up or try to reduce basically the impact that this was having on my own time. Because even though these videos were 3 to 4 minutes each, I was spending about 5 hours to build each one of those because I wanted them to be a high quality product. I wanted them to be beneficial for the women that were participating here. So I built these as part of seasons. So I named the different seasons with different, corny names. And I decided always that that would be part of my invitation speech, or would you like to be part of season 3, where this gave it a little bit more structure, and it helped really to increase the visibility. And it also highlighted to me more and more that this was a two-way highlighting mechanism. We were highlighting them, they were highlighting the area and the topic, and it was, all dandy. But there was a third effect as well that we started realizing, and this was the effect that the forum was having on women that were applying to our department. So as some of you might know, we have a number of new MSc programs at Imperial in the Department of Earth Science and Engineering. Many of them are machine learning oriented. And so we have a lot of computationally inclined women applying to the department. And in early stages, before we had the teaching fellows that we have now that help us with the admission, I was doing a lot of the admission interviews, and I realized that they would all tell me, oh, I watched your forum. Thank you so much for setting this up. I watched through the interviews. These were really useful for me to understand, blah, 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 blah. And so I started realizing that there was this other cohort of women that were watching the videos. I started getting some contacts over LinkedIn from very remote places, people watching the interviews as well. And so I realized that the plan of making it permanent and accessible was working in a sense, because even though I had not been actively creating new videos during COVID, for example, viewing was still quite active. So this meant that I decided to get further into this cause. And I'll just show one more thing. We now have a number of scholarships in our department as well for women, both at the MSc level and at the MSc plus PhD level. And we have something called the 1+3 scholarship, of course, not due to the Watson Forum, but I'd like to think that, at least in my mind, my active involvement in this is the effect of the forum back on myself. And now I lead this scholarship cohort where I'm trying to indoctrinate these ladies, not only to view all the positives of academia in our area, but also to become active members of the community, encouraging other women to take up our working in our field. So now they are going to be organizing in September a mini DigiGirls, but now I guess they'll have to call it something like GeoGirls, where they will be organizing basically a visit from schools where these children will be conducting some hackathon type activities in the area of machine learning with geoscience. And so hopefully we are trying to create more experiences, more opportunities for more women to engage with this area. And in a sense, with every single person that participates in the forum, every single one of them, the idea of the forum is also to set a small seed of sense of responsibility towards addressing the gap, right? Which we know isn't really shrinking that fast. So we know, so even though it's very difficult to quantify what the effect of the Watson Forum is, other than this qualitative experience that I have, I can say that creating the scholarship program, I think, did have a very positive impact on our ability to attract women applicants. So ever since we have the scholarship program, we do have a significantly more or slightly higher percentage of women applying to our MSc programs. And that has helped us push the percentage of intake of women as well, because you need both, right? You need more women applying, and also to try to push our intake to that 0.5% to keep that. So it's a long story. There is no definitive end in sight for this project. It's still ongoing, and it's a piece in a much more complex puzzle. I would like to use this forum to invite everybody that might want to participate, that identifies as a woman or is non-binary, to contact me directly using my email address with the subject Watson Forum or interview, or otherwise I might never see your email, and to set up a short interview. They take 10 minutes to record, and we can record them virtually anywhere. They're very difficult to record online. They have to be recorded live, and hopefully this will allow you to, perhaps convince one person to engage with science and study a STEM subject. And If you are not inclined to do so, perhaps you can visit the site and perhaps even subscribe to the YouTube channel. I have to confess, I'm not a very good YouTuber, but with a lot of dedication, we've had a growing number of subscribers. So now I'm going to try to play one of these short videos to you so that you at least have experienced one of them, and I hope it goes well, and I hope that you enjoy it.
I do lab work and modeling work. So in the lab, I inject tracers into different cores, into carbonate rocks that you have in the subsurface. And I observe, I use a medical CT scanner and observe how this tracer is spreading through this rock. And the first part of my project is to look how just at the transport, how does it, where does it go? And then the second part is to look at reaction, see how does it react with these carbonate rocks. So first I use my model to design my experiments, because when you set up an experiment, you need to know a little bit to get an idea of what to expect. And now I use my model to analyze my experiments, because also at those bigger companies, those oil companies, they use numerical models based on certain equations, but they don't always work for real rocks. So now I use my experiment to see how well these models work. Well, I already did a little bit of modeling during my master's. I always really enjoyed that. And now with my experiments, in the beginning they said, okay, we would like it if you do a little bit of modeling, but now actually I do quite a lot of modeling because I enjoy modeling so much. Because I think it's very nice that you can reproduce your experiment and get similar results just from your model. And modeling is I can do it whenever I want to do. I can do it in the evening or at home or when I go away to my parents, because I'm from the Netherlands and we live in the UK, and sometimes we go to the Netherlands, but I can still work from there. So that's very handy. And well, if I work in the lab, I always have to be here at Imperial. And sometimes I just have to, for example, in the lab, you have to refill the pumps. And then I have to go back in the evening, sometimes at 11 o'clock to refill my pumps. So then I prefer the modeling that I can just press a button from my bed and it all goes. Yeah. I would do exactly the same thing. I always follow my heart. I just do what I like to do. And then in the end, if you just do the things you really like to do, you always end up doing another thing that's related to that, and you'll find a way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adriana. Now we hand over for questions. And as before, there are 2 microphones, so please.
Kamalji Singh from Haripur University. Thank you very much for this excellent talk and also for this great initiative. I was wondering, try to get the idea of how we can enhance the visibility of this. Do like you get support from Imperial, or are you planning to do something like showing video schools and kids?
Yeah, so I have a grand plan, which I haven't achieved yet, which is that I want to amass enough videos so that I can then do a UK-wide event with schools basically. And in order to understand how that works, I have another small outreach project which is now concluding, which is called the Curio Project, which is a science magazine for children.